Hey guys, JamieStarr here, New World News Network. On this episode, I'm going to get into why Sam Harris is just a sort of run-of-the-mill stupid liberal. He's not an intellectual. There's nothing thought-provoking out of what comes out of his mouth. And with this latest thing, I have to say, even all of his skeptic dick riders are repudiating and, counter-arguing his tweet about the Charlottesville thing, while at the same time dick-riding him. Thinking that, somewhere deep in the realms of his mind, there actually is logic and reason and evidence for his claims. And it's not. It's just stupid social justice nonsense. But it does prove that this idea Sam puts forth in his, debates against atheism or debates for atheism and against God and religion and the idea that religion causes doom and death and destruction and everything. It shows you how dangerous it would be if we were governed by a bunch of intellectual snobs, pseudo-intellectual snobs, such as Harrison himself, which is what we've kind of had for a while. The snobbish elitism and everything like that, where, he even calls people calling him on his bullshit intellectual imbeciles, I think was the term. We'll see in the clip. But, this guy is, I think it's, he's done a really good job putting forth this front like he is a deep thinker or something, but all of these new atheist people, babies die, therefore there is no God. You obviously have no depth in your understanding of religion or anything like that. I even saw some other guy today, something Yaron Brock, or he's debated Gavin McInnes too, talking about Ben Shapiro, talking about Western culture being rooted in Christianity, and he says it's rooted in Greece. Well, Andrew Clavin says it's, what was it, like Jesus and Aristotle, a Jew and a fag, that are the basis of Western. It's both. It's not one or the other. But that guy said, I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist since 6. So you're not going to allow religion to get any credit because you only want to view it as a negative. Harris, it's confirmation bias. People who idolize Harris, they already don't agree with religion. So all they need to hear is someone eloquently saying a bunch of illogical fallacies. And, as Steven Crowder says, they let him get away with illogical fallacies that they wouldn't stand for with anyone else. But because they like the conclusion drawn from it, they go with it. So it's just a confirmation bias. And then the way he pauses when he speaks makes it seem as if there's lots of thoughts going on. And he's trying really perfectly to articulate what he plans on saying. It's sort of like Obama. It's the rhythmic sort of neuro-linguistic programming. Again, he's a cognitive scientist, probably understands that stuff. But as far as his views on politics and religion and just wanting this guy to comment on everything, what the fuck does he know? He's a moron. And we're going to show that basic common sense and concepts like equality are far beyond Sam Harris's grasp. And, if that's beyond your grasp, I have a hard time buying that you're such a profound thinker in any other regard. He's educated. He's an educated idiot. Oh, and we're going to get into this because this was put out months before this tweet. So, and funny how it's the religion of identity politics. See, this is another one of these things atheists do. I catch, who is it? I think Computing Forever, who I do like. And there's a few other of these people where it's like, they'll talk about an issue. Atheists do this all the time. Watch for it. They'll talk about an issue, especially amazing atheists, and then they will always pivot towards religion. They will pivot it towards and say, oh, well, this is like in religion where, and bring it to a playing field that they're comfortable on. Because they're comfortable, bad-mouthing religion and everything. So as long as they can equate it to that and get it into the game that they're familiar with playing, it's, you can't just talk about identity politics. It has to be the religion of identity politics, because if he's, made his reputation on denouncing religion, well, as long as he can just tie this into it, it's light work for him. Because again, playing on that confirmation bias, if you agree with Harris and you agree with Harris on his views about religion, and then he shows you how his views on identity politics mirror his views on religion, well, why wouldn't you just fall in line with it? Now, I'm not defending identity politics. I think they're bad. But as we can see, Sam Harris loves identity politics. He just thinks you shouldn't do it while he does.
I distrust identity politics of all kinds. I think we should talk about specific issues, whether it's trade or guns or immigration or foreign interventions or abortion or anything else. And we should reason honestly about them. And I'm not the first person to notice that it's pretty strange that knowing a person's position on any one of these issues generally allows you to predict his position on the others. This shouldn't happen.
Now, let's just get into something about this. He's working under this assumption, I'm pretty sure, I did watch this one time through, that, like he said, immigration, trade, guns, abortion, whatever, that there's a identity underpinning rather than an ideological underpinning. Like the idea that a life is a life, that's the thing for abortion. But, on the left, for example, where they have this anti-God, anti-human sort of disrespect for life and idolization of science and materialism and everything like that, well, at the same time wanting to fucking do yoga and meditate and whatever, but you see it where it's like, okay, well, if you believe, in climate change, what was the one? Oh yeah, if you believe a life is just a bundle of cells and everything like that, and that sort of appeal to science takes precedent over, no, it's a life. The science shows it has its own genetic code. It's not just an extension of the mother. It's its own living creature, own human. You can't kill it. But if you're fine with killing babies, and then they tell you, okay, well, we have to limit births because of climate change, and we have to clamp down on, everything because of climate change, because science tells us this and that. Well, you've already had science teach you that a life isn't a life, so what would it matter? There's ideological underpinnings. It's not identity-based underpinnings, and to believe that it is identity politics in and of itself. I mean, I do think all politics at some point are identity politics, because it's all concerning people. It's funny, it's sort of like when I see attacks on institutions, and, like I was watching CNN, and they're saying, well, it's okay for Trump to attack the media, but when he attacks people in the media, and it's like, yeah, but the media is made up of people. Corporations are made up of people. We're real comfortable with attacking the imaginary, inanimate titles of things, but once you tie it into direct personal responsibility and accountability, it all goes to hell.
Some of these issues are totally unrelated. Why should a person's attitude toward guns be predictive of his views on climate change or immigration or abortion?
Because maybe it has to do with their overall views on authority. Just an idea. I mean, that's just an idea. The people who want less government, less involvement, agree with the Second Amendment, believe a life is... I mean, it makes complete sense to me, but for him to think like... I don't know. It's ridiculous.
And yet, it almost certainly is in our society. That's a sign that people are joining tribes and movements, right? It's not the sign of clear thinking. If you're reasoning honestly...
How is it not a sign of clear thinking? It's basically... I assume what you're trying to say is, if we need government regulation of the weather and climate and everything like that, government regulation of guns and everything like that, government regulation over wombs and free abortions and, everything like that. Like, you're just saying, what, anyone who disagrees with a fucking supermassive government state is not thinking clearly? Really? I mean, how is this guy... is this clear thinking to liberals?
About facts, then the color of your skin is irrelevant. The religion of your parents is irrelevant.
See, this is...
whether you're gay or straight is irrelevant.
See, and this is where I don't think he doesn't understand what makes up a person, basically. Isn't this guy like a cognitive scientist? If you're reasoning, and I do understand you should be able to disconnect yourself, but again, some of these things have broader implications. If the history of your family, if you were a child of a Holocaust victim who, Hitler enacted gun control before and took all the guns before he rounded everyone up, there was an incident like the Warsaw Ghetto, well, that's going to affect your views on gun control. It's almost like you're trying to say that history, personal background, and all this isn't factual, that people's existences aren't somehow what creates the facts. Like, this is what drove me crazy in my debate with Res One about racism and everything, where he would say, I don't want to talk about stats, I want to talk about people and the instances. And I said, yeah, but those are the anecdotal instances that compile the stats. The stats are just a broad view, and you want to look at the details of each. I'm talking about the big picture. You're talking about the small picture. And Sam doesn't seem to grasp that.
Your identity is irrelevant. In fact...
Your identity is irrelevant, but yet we make politics based on identity. I don't think it's right. Sam... we'll see with his tweet and his attempted defense.
If you're talking about reality, its character can't be predicated on who you happen to be. Right? That's what it means to be talking about reality. And this also applies to the reality of human experience and human suffering.
I'm mind-boggling, and maybe I should just let him go a little bit longer and not be cutting in every little bit. But, like, he just said that, who you are doesn't matter, but then is talking about the human experience and your reality, which is all based on who you are. Like, I don't understand how he's having it both ways in a way.
For instance, if vaccines don't cause autism,
what?
If that is just a fact, and that's what the best science suggests at this point, well then when arguing against this view, you need data or a new analysis of existing data.
Yeah, and I have a video presentation where I went through a bunch of data, including the insert that comes with the vaccine. Including the insert. Oh, and the fact that vaccine courts have paid out millions in damages and everything like that. So I don't know what Mr. Harris is talking about. I don't think he's done much research into it. But again, this is all like, he's just spewing leftist talking points. He's just really good at talking. There's nothing of substance being said yet.
You need an argument. Okay? And the nature of any argument is that its validity doesn't depend on who you are. That's why a good argument should be accepted by others.
But what about when you have instances where autism is spiking in vaccinated African Americans? What if it's affecting them worse than others? Is it an issue then? Is it an issue when, diabetes affects blacks more than other groups? Is it an issue with, I don't know what this...
No matter who they are. So, in the case of vaccines causing autism, you don't get to say, as a parent of a child with autism, I believe X, Y, and Z. Whatever is true about the biological basis of autism can't depend on who you are. And who you are in this case is probably adding a level of emotional engagement with the issue which would be totally understandable, but would also be unlikely to lead you to think about it more clearly.
So, now what he's trying to say here is all of the parents who've brought perfectly fine kids into the doctor, gotten these shots with all this shit in it, and ended up like, oh, the girl who got the Gardasil shot, where now she's paralyzed. They don't know what they're talking about. They're personally involved. How can they understand? They just trust the scientists. Just let the scientists tell you. The scientists know. Just let the academic elitists and the scientists rule over all of us. We don't know anything about anything. We're too involved, I mean, it's not like a vaccine court has paid out billions of dollars in damages. None of those people, they didn't know what they were talking about. How did they know their kid wasn't autistic on one day and then 2 days later when the light's out in their fucking eyes? I mean, really.
The facts are whatever they are. And it's not an accident that being disinterested, not uninterested, but disinterested, that is, not being emotionally engaged, usually improves a person's ability to reason about the facts. When talking about violence in our society, again, the facts are whatever they are. How many people got shot? How many died? What was the color of their skin? Who shot them? What was the color of their skin? Getting a handle on these facts doesn't require one to say, as a black man, I know X, Y, and Z. The color of your skin simply isn't relevant information. When talking about the data, that is what is happening throughout a whole society, your life experience isn't relevant information.
And that I agree with.
You think it might be is a problem. Now, this isn't to say that a person's life experience is never relevant to a conversation. Of course it is. And it can be used to establish certain kinds of facts. I mean, if someone says to you, Catholics don't believe in hell, it's perfectly valid to retort, actually, my mom is a Catholic, and she believes in hell. Of course, there's a larger question of what the Catholic doctrine actually is. But if a person is making a statement about a certain group of people, and you are a member of the group, you might very well be in a position to falsify his claim on the basis of your experience. But a person's identity and life experience often aren't relevant when talking about facts. And they're usually invoked in ways that are clearly fallacious. And many people seem to be making a political religion out of ignoring this difference. So I urge you not to be one of those people.
Because we all know religion is bad. Now, let's get into Sam Harris making an idiot of himself.
So, we were all set to talk about...
Let me fast forward it a little bit in here.
To cover with respect to right after Charlottesville, I wrote, quoting myself now on Twitter, start with Charlottesville and Trump and the heat he's getting for his response to it, because I'm in hot water here with at least the moral imbecile wing of my audience.
Moral imbecile wing. The moral imbecile wing. Computing forever. Atheism is unstoppable. His followers, who believe you shouldn't judge people on race. Basically, people who see the world as Martin Luther King are moral imbeciles. And this is Sam Harris with his nose in the air. Oh, I know better than everyone. Facts, reason, rational, logic. You know, all of his grand ideas about nothing.
For a tweet I sent out right after Charlottesville, I wrote, quoting myself now on Twitter, in 2017, all identity politics is detestable, but surely white identity politics is the most detestable of all.
So even right there, it's a fucking, you know, in one breath, oh yeah, doing this is bad, but I'm doing it to this group of people, and I'm going to say it's even worse when they do it. But don't mind me doing it because I'm doing it to my own group. See, that's the little game he's playing.
The absolutely cretinous response to that, I added, the necessary context, of course, is the last 200 years of human history. So I think it's perfect to debrief with you over this because your bona fides as someone who is worrying about immigration are impeccable, obviously. And there's no doubt there are people in the world or even in our audience who worry that you may be a white supremacist or be motivated by racism. So I want to kind of walk through this, and if there's any point where you disagree, I'll be very interested to hear it. But let me just clarify what I was saying about identity politics here, because the point strikes me as absolutely obvious, but given the response, it's clearly not obvious to some people. Just to give you the predictable response, I've been accused of virtue signaling in the most abject way. This is kind of reverse racism, you know, so racism against white people is okay, or you can only be racist if you're white. I hate white people. Something in that genre just came to me in torrents. So let me just clarify this and then see if you disagree. So just as not all religions are the same.
Again, pivot to religion.
More to say against Islam than I have against Anglicanism, though I can find something to say about Anglicanism. And I have much less to say against Buddhism. I think there are wonderful things in Buddhism, although I have negative things to say about it as a religion. There are differences here, and so too with identity politics. Not all identity politics are the same, and they're certainly not the same with respect to the context in which they're being practiced in history.
So now he's about to really delve into justifying identity politics. The very thing he said you're not supposed to engage in. I mean, we're not going to go through this whole half hour, but I mean, it is a half hour of him engaging in identity politics.
I mean, if you were practicing German identity politics in London in 1950, well, then you deserve to have the shit kicked out of you, right? I mean, this is just, you know, and the same could be true for, you know, Japanese identity politics in Nanking. And if you compare that to...
Now, here's the other thing, because as we saw with Harrison, his thing before, and notice how he's talking, well, if you're talking about this group from here, in this period, practicing identity politics, what does that even mean, practicing identity politics? Like, how and when does the practicing of identity politics stop? I don't even know exactly. I mean, yeah, going out and having a march and a rally, that's one thing, but I assume you carry that with you through all of your actions. I don't think it's something you turn on and off, which is basically as he's describing it. So while he is here, you know, lumping groups together, making different rules for each group, rationalizing it in one place, saying it's condemnable over here, basically establishing different rules for different groups in different places and different time periods, he would say, well, that's not me engaging in identity politics because, you know, I'm not involving my personal experience. Well, I'm stepped back and I'm talking about the facts and the evidence and the reason and this and the... Moron.
Black identity politics in Alabama in 1964, which I think most sane people would acknowledge was not only morally understandable, but morally and politically necessary, right? I mean, that is identity politics, aka the civil rights movement in America. Now, my tweet was actually fairly carefully written. I mean, it starts with, in 2017,
Current year.
Politics is detestable. And of course, I'm thinking about the West, and I'm thinking primarily about America. I was commenting on Charlottesville, and I believe this. I think Black Lives Matter is a dangerous and divisive and retrograde movement, and it is a dishonest movement. I mean, it's not to say that everyone associated with it is dishonest, but I find very
not
little
all
to recommend in what I've seen from Black Lives Matter. I think it is the wrong move for African Americans to be organizing around the variable of race now. It's obviously the wrong move. It's obviously destructive to civil society. But let me just say that Black identity politics in the U.S. in 2017 is still totally understandable. I think it's misguided.
See that?
It's completely understandable. And
so all identity politics aren't bad. It's Black identity politics. That's completely understandable. So he's completely contradicted what he said. I mean, what he's really saying is only white identity politics are bad.
Certain local cases, perhaps even defensible. What is not understandable, generally speaking, is white identity politics in the U.S. in 2017. I mean, you've got pampered doughboys like Richard Spencer who have never been the victim of anything.
Never been the victim of anything. Now watch for the next sentence. This is like his little magic trick where it's like out one side of his mouth he says one thing and then out the other side it's the complete opposite.
Except now the consequences of his own stupidity. And now he gets punched as a Nazi because people mistake him for a Nazi, though he doesn't think he's a Nazi, and perhaps he isn't a Nazi. But
see that? So he gets punched because people think he is something that he isn't, but he's not the victim of anything. That's his own stupidity. It's his stupidity that other people think he's something he isn't, and he gets punched over it. So I'm pretty sure that's called victim blaming. But, he's a white nationalist or whatever, so he can't ever be the victim because he's got too much privilege or something. I mean, this is a thought leader to groups of people, and I don't understand how. I honestly would like to think that most of the YouTubers that I like that look up to this guy are actually more intellectual and deeper thinkers than Sam Harris. And I don't know why they look up to someone who's below them. And I'm saying that in regards to like Sargon of Akkad and other people of that ilk.
You have white nationalists and white supremacists marching in the company of actual Nazis and members of the KKK.
Actual Nazis? Like in walkers? Like, are they, like, I mean, how old would they be to be actual Nazis? These aren't Nazis. These are people LARPing. Do they look like they're a threat to anyone? No. You can't come out and in one breath say Richard Spencer, one of the, key figures of the alt-right, is some plushy little doughboy who's a pampered little brat, and then be, but they're real-life Nazis and the KKK. You're having it both ways. It can't be intimidating, but then also be something that's, look at him.
And that is aligning themselves with people who actually celebrate Adolf Hitler and the murder of millions of people, right? And so this is not the same thing as Black Lives Matter, and it's not the same thing as even Antifa, these goons who attack them. And
he's completely wrong about that, because if you look at where Antifa has come from, this sort of Weather Underground 2.0, the 1960s with the Weather Underground, they want re-education camps, and they want a genocide. In Germany, people would switch between the National Socialists, the Nazis, Socialist, and the Communists, both left-wing movements. I don't know why this is right anything. Unite the right? No. I don't know why. I mean, it all seems like a Democrat op to try to unite these fringe left-wing political groups into the right wing somehow. But, I mean, the communists have killed people. Antifa is a communist movement. Sam Harris is a moron for trying to say Antifa is nothing like them. They're communist. Communists have killed people. Communists have killed more people than socialists, but they're the same thing.
And you perhaps got attacked in turn. It's hard to sort out who started it there. And I've got nothing good to say about Antifa. These people have been attacking people all over the country, and they're responsible for a lot of violence. I think it's a dangerous organization, but it doesn't have the same genocidal ideology of actual Nazis, right? So
yes, it does, because they're actually communists. But Sam Harris probably hasn't looked that far into it.
You have to make distinctions here, and all identity politics is not the same. So I guess I'm just wondering, do you disagree with any of that?
I think I have a slightly different take on it. I mean,
all identity politics is not the same, but yet he thinks it's all detestable, but some of it's okay sometimes, even defensible and justifiable sometimes, and then the socialists aren't as bad as the communists. Yet, you know, a socialist is only someone who's too dumb to realize they are a communist. I mean, this guy is a moron, just spouting off leftist talking points. There's no deep insight here. In fact, he's an idiot weighing in on things he knows nothing about. And this is the problem with this academic elitism and everything like that, where people who aren't qualified to talk about certain things and aren't even willing to do the research because they think they already know everything they need to know, they think because they are who they are. And this is Sam Harris's game of identity politics. His identity politics is him thinking because people regard him so highly and think he's so thought-provoking that it then gives him carte blanche to talk about things he knows nothing about. And in the process, because he doesn't know enough about these things, spread complete disinformation and have to contradict himself left and right. If you listen to the rest of this interview, every time Douglas Murray makes a remark that contradicts Sam's, Sam goes, yeah, I agree, but, yeah, I agree, but, yeah, I agree, but. Now, think about it. Would you want people like this shaping this society? Oh, yeah, murder is wrong. Yeah, I agree, but... Oh, this group of people is doing this to another group. Yeah, I agree, but... He's an idiot. And him thinking people calling him out for being an idiot, that makes them moral imbeciles, just shows he's a snob and an elitist. And he should be recognized as it. So, anyway, I'm not going to bore you guys with the rest of the video, plus I got a few other things to do. Have a good one, everyone. Check the links below, check out the websites, follow me on Twitter, and take care, everyone.